Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for coming out here today. This is a big day in Pennsylvania for our first responder community. I'm Representative Steve Berrar, Chairman of the House Veteran Affairs Committee and Emergency Preparedness. We're here this morning in observance of National Fire Prevention Month and to call attention to some legislation that will soon be introduced and voted on beginning this week. How would you feel if you had a fire or an accident or a life-threatening emergency and when you dialed 911, no one responded? This type of doomsday scenarios are not far-fetched, and I'll tell you why. We're witnessing an alarming trend and a sharp, steady decline in the number of people volunteering to serve as firefighters or emergency medical service providers. In the 1970s, there were about 300,000 volunteer firefighters in Pennsylvania. Today, there are fewer than 38,000. If this trend continues, there may be a day when no one is there to respond for your call for help. In Pennsylvania and nationwide, there has been a general decline in volunteerism. While many things have contributed to this trend, some of the causes are preventable. 2 years ago, a few of us in Pennsylvania's House and Senate set out to identify the specific cause of the decline in fire and EMS personnel in the Commonwealth. We assembled a bipartisan commission, the SR6 Commission, made up of every type of first responder group you can imagine. We held a series of hearings throughout the state, gathering information that would help us find legislative solutions to the problem. Now, we have quite a few of our members here were served on the SR6 Commission. Would you guys raise your hand? Let's give them a round of applause. They put 2 years of their life into the SR Commission and did an incredible job. But today we are pleased to announce that we have introduced a package of 23 bills to address many of the recommendations of the SR6 Commission. This legislation would address the well-being of our emergency personnel and provide incentives to help recruitment and maintain volunteer and career first responders. Our fire and EMS personnel routinely encounters high stress, often tragic situations. This leads many to depression, even suicide. In fact, each year, more police and emergency responders die at their own hand than in the line of duty. This needs to stop. A bill I am sponsoring defines post-traumatic stress injury and enables first responders who are suffering from post-traumatic stress stemming from a traumatic event to receive mental health benefits they need. Another bill would create a peer-to-peer mental wellness and stress management program for first responders. Because these volunteers are not paid for their work, for the work they do, many of the bills in this package would establish incentives to make it easier to volunteer and to commit their time and efforts to these crucial public service. Such incentives such as tuition assistance, college loan forgiveness, property tax credits, cash assistance, and length of service and online training for firefighters. Many fire companies and EMS providers are also strapped financially. In one example, a study from the Allegheny County EMS Council showed that 75% of its agencies reported financial losses, and only 3% of the agency expenses go towards capital purchases, such as vehicles and life-saving equipment. Their inability to purchase and maintain modern equipment could impede their ability to properly treat individuals as needed. What's worse is that many, if not most of them, other volunteer fire companies and EMS services across the state find themselves in similar circumstances. Our legislative package would provide much-needed relief. It would make it easier for municipal and career fire companies, as well as volunteer fire and EMS services, to access loans. It would also permit volunteer fire and EMS companies to hold on to grant awards for up to 5 years to enable them to save for larger projects and expensive equipment. It would increase surcharges and certain violations to enhance the EMS operating fund, authorize volunteer fire departments to recoup costs for material and equipment used in an emergency, and require insurance carriers to directly reimburse 911 dispatched ambulances to ensure that they receive the payment that they are due, which is an incredible problem. Just that issue alone would go a long way in helping our ambulance companies be more financially secure. That bill has been around here for probably 14 years, and hopefully this year we'll see it passed and signed into law. Many of these bills will be voted on this week and the weeks ahead of us. I encourage my House colleagues to support them all. My sincere thanks to the members of the SR6 Commission for their substantial work that it did to lay the groundwork for this legislation in this important day. Most of these members gave up a lot of their time to be part of the commission. Thank you to the members of my committee who are here today for their work in moving these bills forward. In the past over 2 weeks, we moved out 16 bills out of the House Veteran Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. House Majority Leader is here with us. Majority Leader Brian Cutler has been at the forefront of this effort. He not only understands the importance of this initiative, but his support has been vital in bringing this package of bills forward today. Can I, Mr. Leader, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members who are here and members of the commission. I certainly appreciate all the great work that you've put in. We want to thank everyone for being here, but most importantly, our first responders. We owe far more to them than just this package of bills. So thank you for what you're willing to sacrifice to be there for each of our communities. This issue does not pick or choose who is impacted, rural, suburban, or urban. All fire companies and responders are currently facing challenges. And I want to share a story of an example that happened not far from here just a few weeks ago and in my home county. On Monday morning in late September, just before 10 a.m., a resident in East Donegal Township, Lancaster County, smelled what they thought might be a gas leak. So they exited their house and dutifully called 911, just as we're all directed. Dispatcher alerts the East Donegal Fire Company. However, at that time, there was no crew immediately available to respond. So then the dispatcher called the neighboring fire company, and that crew was also not able to respond. It took components from 4 neighboring companies, including 2 from outside of the county, to respond within the appropriate equipment and staff. The first responders arrived 21 minutes after the initial call. I think this paints a clear picture of the challenges we are facing with those declining volunteer roles that the chairman outlined previously. 300,000 down, 85%. Between 9 and 5, most of our community volunteers are at work. And in my own home community, my own fire company is primarily staffed by Amish volunteers. So our other challenge, quite frankly, is finding individuals who can drive the apparatus should a call come in. So we must act to ensure that our volunteer ranks grow and that businesses are incentivized to allow their employees to continue to be volunteers. Our loved ones, friends, and neighbors are depending on us to take action before it's too late. So I want to thank the chairman for all your hard work. Thank Chairman Sonato as well, because they've diligently worked through this package, and I look forward to working with them as we move the bills out of committee and onto the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Our next speaker is Chairman Chris Sonato. Chris is my co-chairman in the Veteran Affairs Committee, and we work well together. So Chris is of Lawrence County. He's the minority chairman of the House Committee, and just one of the great guys who's done so much to help move this along. Chairman Sonato.
Thank you, Chairman Brar. It is an honor to be here with all my colleagues that are behind me, standing as one. This is truly a great day in Pennsylvania. It's a great day because of 2 years of dedication and hard work that our committee has put together. As Chairman Brar said about the SR6 Commission, people volunteered their time, and we thank each and every one of you that participated in this. The men and women standing behind me, we're so proud of your efforts. And this is historical. I think as the year began, we passed historical legislation for our National Guard and the program for free education for our guardsmen. We were the leader in the nation with that piece of legislation, the first in the nation. And today, we have other bills that the country is watching us on. And that is a testament to the effort and work that the House has done here in Harrisburg. A piece of legislation I am proposing is a loan forgiveness after putting 4 years of service to a fire company. It's critical that we have incentives for our men and women to join EMS and our volunteer fire companies. Nothing is free. Remember that. Nothing is free. These people earn it. They earn it day and night when they get the call to go into service. And it's so critical that we have come together in a true bipartisan fashion. I always believe I serve on the best committee in the House because myself and Chairman Brar, we really put an effort, and all of our members on both sides have a unified voice to fight for our veterans and for our EMS and fire service. So today is truly a historical day at the state capitol as we prepare this week, the following week, to run very important pieces of legislation that hopefully will turn the decline down in our services, because it's critical for Pennsylvania and our men and women that do take the call to action. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our Speaker of the House, Mike Turzai. We want to thank Mike for all his efforts. Oh, you're not going to speak, Mr. Speaker?
Chris, just thank you so much to you, Chairman Brar, Leader Cutler, outstanding job to all of our first responders. Thank you so much for being with us today as we move this important legislation forward. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Majority Leader Cutler. And I will, Chairman Brar, call you back up.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chaz McGarvey. He is the Chief Fire Officer, Fire Marshal in Lower Merion Township Fire Department. Chaz has also served on the SR6 Commission, where he has been an outspoken and effective advocate for those in this line of work. Chaz, you here? Where you at? Right behind me. There you are.
Good morning. I'm Chief Chaz McGarvey of the Lower Merion Township Fire Department and former chair of the SR6 Commission Government Support Subcommittee. On behalf of the SR6 Commission and the subcommittee chairs, I'm happy to come before you to see some of these very important recommendations be brought to fruition. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Chairman Brar, Senato, Reagan Williams, and former Chairman Vlakovich, their staff, and all the members of the SR6 Commission for their leadership and for their dedication and efforts in helping to make this day happen. Today, we have the capacity to lay a legislative foundation upon which the future of fire and EMS services in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will be built. As legislation is being presented for vote to the House of Representatives, we must not forget that even with the passage of these bills, fire and EMS services remain in crisis. The number of active volunteers, as you've heard, has diminished drastically from over 300,000 in the 1970s to less than 38,000 today. And this number is continuing to decline, a fact that simply cannot continue to be ignored. To further this dilemma, we are now witnessing a decrease in the number of applicants for career positions within fire and EMS services statewide. This significantly is impacting the ability of municipalities to protect the citizens of the Commonwealth, and to provide reliable fire and EMS medical services. This package of bills will help lessen the impact of funding decreases to the volunteer fire and EMS services. However, I urge our legislators to take this one step further and extend similar assistance to the career fire and EMS departments. Our state legislators must continue to act with political fortitude and take action on the remaining recommendations of the Commission's report. Most importantly, the following. Recommendation 3, which ensures for fire and EMS coverage across the Commonwealth and provides for a minimum standard of cover. Recommendation 5, which creates a state fire commission to ensure our firefighters are properly trained and that our fire companies and fire departments are properly equipped and meeting minimum standards statewide. Recommendation 6, which will enable the establishment of regional or county fire departments, thus eliminating the duplication of fire and EMS services while better utilizing taxpayer monies. Recommendation 18, which will help define, classify, and standardize training levels for fire service providers, similar to the paradigms employed by police and EMS departments. Recommendation 23, which will allow for local municipalities to adopt sprinkler ordinances and use them to supplement their fire service, especially bearing in mind that it was the state who mandated that local municipalities must provide fire and EMS services. If the local municipalities are to be tasked with this responsibility of providing such services, limits should not be placed on how they are to provide it. And recommendation 24, which will allow local municipalities to adopt their own fireworks legislation, so that our neighborhoods aren't sounding like war zones on the 4th of July and other holidays. We ask you to please support and adopt the legislation that has been proposed by Representative Fari, namely House Bill 1687, which would assist Pennsylvania's communities to combat the problems that fireworks cause. As I have stated before, this commission was made up of professionals from across the Commonwealth that began this process as 3 separate and distinct groups, namely the Volunteer Fire Service, the Career Fire Service, and the EMS Service. I am proud to report that through the work of this commission, those walls were knocked down, and we have come out of this process united. We now have a united first responder community that wants to act in the best interest of all those who serve, as well as the residents of Pennsylvania that we serve. We, the Fire and EMS Service, are once again asking the legislation, when drafting these and future bills, to please stop distinguishing between the volunteer and career fire service. All of us who served on this commission unanimously agreed that we don't want this separation, and we are asking for this to stop. What is suitable for the volunteer fire and EMS service is good for the career fire and EMS service, and vice versa. We are not career firefighters, and we are not volunteer firefighters or EMS providers, but instead we are simply put first responders. As you're aware, many of the recommendations found in this report are not new and have been previously reported to the legislature dating back as far as 1976, yet they were not acted upon. The basis for many of the unaddressed recommendations made in those previous reports remains valid today, and the continuing decline in the fire and emergency medical services warrants them being acted upon without delay. In closing, at the April 1st hearing before the Veterans and Emergency Preparedness Committee, I said, if the legislatures of our Commonwealth are serious and truly want to help and preserve the fire and EMS services, then the legislation must step up to the plate and act upon all the recommendations of the Commission's report, and not just those that are easy, have no cost associated with them, or those that may have political backlash or monetary support attached. It is very, very encouraging to see that you have begun this process. I want to thank our legislature for their actions, and thus far urge them to continue to be strong and to work in a bipartisan manner in order to make the necessary difficult decisions and to adopt all the recommendations that were put forward. By doing so, you will help to save one of the oldest traditions in our nation's history, the volunteer fire service. If you fail to act on the remaining recommendations, then the decline will continue to happen, and the fire and EMS services as we know it today will collapse. The recommendations in this report are simply too important to be put on the shelf of the previous studies, and therefore I urge you to continue to pass the necessary legislation to save us from this collapse. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our next speaker is Charles Cressley. Thank you, Charles, for being here. Charles and his wife Macy and son Ander are with us today. Now I would like to have them come up and speak. Thanks for being here.
We'll wait for our son to get over here. He's a little camera shy, and there's my daughter. Thank you everyone for coming out here and listening to our story. On June 23rd, we found out that our son was highly allergic to peanuts that day. It was only a week after his first birthday, and not only was he allergic to peanuts, he was highly allergic. It would send him into anaphylactic shock and bring him in within an inch of his life. We were 20 minutes away from the nearest hospital in a rural setting, and when we called the 911, the dispatcher advised us to stay calm and continued to, because it was very, very, very hard to stay calm when your son is his body is being covered in hives. He's crying, but he can't make a sound because his throat and airways were shutting. It was 10 minutes before help arrived, and what we had hoped for to hear when we heard the sirens was an ambulance, you know, with paramedics coming with any type of medicine or help. What we did receive, though, was the local fire company, thank God, answered the call when there weren't any paramedic units available, and we've come to find out afterwards that the nearest paramedic unit would have been a half an hour away, and with every second we needed them. And so thank God the fire department did show up, but they were not equipped with an EpiPen or any other type of apparatus to help him. When they showed up, my wife Macy handed Anders to the volunteers that day, and we weren't sure if we were going to see him alive by the time we get to the hospital. When we did reach the hospital, the doctors were amazed that he was still alive. He was barely on the brink of life, and they administered all the help that he needed, and thank God he's still here with us. Thank God for the Siegel Fire Department. But if something had happened on the way to the fire department or to the hospital, there was no way they could have helped. His airways were blocked. They didn't have any means of getting him air. There's a lot of issues with this that have come to light, and I'm not an expert on it, but the experts are here, and the people that can make a difference are here, and I just hope that this might hopefully change. Something could happen that there are more paramedics, there are more emergency medical professionals in the area, especially in rural areas. He's doing great. No more peanuts, no more peanut butter. It's all right. I'll make it. But
thank you for having us.
thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll start your mom. Come on, Rylan.
And the story that they told is not that uncommon. It happens every day. And so often we hear of long response times from an ambulance crew all over the state of Pennsylvania. Our next speaker is Joe Reagan. And Joe is with the Fraternal Order Police. Joe?
Good morning. On behalf of the Pennsylvania FOP, I'd like to thank Chairman Barrar and Senato and the members of the House that are here, leadership. Thank you all for your support and for giving us the opportunity to share the voice of Pennsylvania's law enforcement officers regarding House Bill 432. There is a stigma that surrounds members of law enforcement, and is one that they must be strong, a matter of the situation, and asking for help is a sign of weakness. That stigma is costing lives. According to the advocacy group Blue Help, suicides by those in law enforcement are up 24% compared to this same time last year. An alarming statistic. As of yesterday, 100 law enforcement officers were killed in the line of duty this year in the United States. To date, 175 have taken their own lives. There are several potential factors for these suicides. Responsibilities of the job, home life and stress, and the least discussed yet more important, the trauma that law enforcement officers experience on a day-to-day basis. As law enforcement, we see things that are forever etched into our memories long after the shift has ended. Sadly, a percentage of those who make the decision to protect and serve our communities now find themselves riddled with post-traumatic stress injury, or PTSI, feeling as though there is no one there to protect them. Most recently, there's been a lot in the media about police suicides in the city of New York. But it hits us in Pennsylvania, and it hits us in some of the smaller communities, some of the police officers in some of those communities in Pennsylvania that are, in my case, one in my department. It's a fairly good community, 140 members, and we had one of our officers that took his own life. But what seems to bother me the most is that the officers come to work and they know that they're going to commit this act. They put on their uniform. And in the case of my department, he drove down to FDR Park in Philadelphia, and he ended his life. A neighboring department, an officer went in for 4 to 12. No indication whatsoever. And after roll call, he took his own life, right in the parking lot. So I had to talk to the professionals, and I said, I can't wrap my head around this. Why do they come to work, put on their uniform, and commit this act? They said it's actually pretty easy. They know that law enforcement can handle the aftermath. They'll sweep up the glass. They'll clean up the scene, and everything's back to normal. And it's a little hard to take, but it affects all of us in law enforcement. And the young guy from my department, it's with me forever. It's with a lot of the members of our department forever. There are always going to be traumatic memories etched in our memories. I guess that was a bad statement there, excuse me. Providing our men and women with the tools to break the stigma so they will seek help will save lives. House Bill 432 is addressing this very important issue, and we appreciate all of your support with House Bill 432. The officers need to go seek the treatment. They really have to break that sort of Superman syndrome that they have, that they are above all. So we appreciate all your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for that, for your comments. Next is J.T. Pennington, Secretary Treasurer of the Pennsylvania Professional Firefighters Association.
Good morning. Can we get an amen that it's not raining? My name is J.T. Pennington. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Pennsylvania Professional Firefighters Association. I've been a firefighter with the Aliquippa Bureau of Fire for 21 years and currently hold the rank of captain. On behalf of firefighters across Pennsylvania, I would like to thank Chairman Barrar, Chairman Sonato, their staff, and all the members of the Veterans Affairs Emergency Preparedness Committee for their hard work on this package of legislation being presented this week, inspired by the SR6 report. One of those pieces of legislation is House Bill 432. Under current law, first responders in Pennsylvania find it extremely difficult to get help after they are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress injury. House Bill 432 would go a long way to correct this problem by adding post-traumatic stress injuries to the list of physical injuries currently covered by Workman's Comp. On January 12, 2012, while fighting a structure fire in Aliquippa, the ladder that I was on, just like the ladder there to to my left collapsed without warning, and I fell 5 stories, injuring most of my body. As a result of the fall, I eventually underwent 6 surgeries in order to be able to return to work. All of those physical injuries I received from the fall were covered by workman's comp, except one. The injury that was not covered from the traumatic experiences that I suffered while doing my job and serving the citizens of Aliquippa was post-traumatic stress injury that I was diagnosed with by my employer's doctor after the fall. This is not right, and this is not fair. Every day, first responders across Pennsylvania, from Altoona to Pittsburgh, Johnstown, Allentown, Philadelphia, Newcastle, and everywhere else, suffer and struggle from the effects of doing their job. And after a long struggle and failing to get the help they need, some even do the unthinkable and take their own lives. Changes scenarios from my ladder accident to somebody running out of their house. Change the name, somebody running out of their house and handing them a baby that is not breathing and asking them to save their lives. House Bill 432 has 85 co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle. I want to thank each and every legislator who has signed on to House Bill 432. When this bill is passed, your work will save lives. We are always there when the emergency call comes in and the citizens of Pennsylvania need us. Now we are asking our elected officials to be there when we need them. Please support House Bill 432. Thank you.
I'm calling up Brian Phelps, Fire Chief, Caldersport? What is it? Caldersport. Okay, volunteer fire company in Potter County.
Good morning. I'm Chief Brian Phelps of the Caldersport Volunteer Fire Department. We've been serving our community for 135 years out of Potter County at 100% volunteer since our beginning. I'm currently serving as the fire chief of that department for the last 9 years and have served in that position for over a period of time of 15 years. Our fire district answers approximately 200 alarms a year, operating out of 248 square miles. That's right, 248 square miles covering a borough and 6 townships, either in full or partial coverage. 9 other departments represent and cover Potter County of an area of 1,100 square miles. It's unheard of. So along with these reports out of SR6 of using our neighbors for help, we've been doing it for a long time, and I thank the committee for their recommendations and consideration in these House bills that have been presented. A lot of our funding in our county is made up, with my own fire department, has 66% direct financial support from the municipalities, with 28% from fundraising and 6% from grants. So 28% of our budget is done by chickens and other things. So we definitely encourage the passing of these House bills for the extension of some of these grants to help not only my department, but other rural departments across the state with our funding and preparing our firefighters for these true emergencies that occur. Since I began as a junior in '86 to chief of the department, we've become an all-hazard department. We're not just answering calls for service for fires anymore. We're assisting our local EMS, hazardous weather events, as well as hazardous materials. So the funding and the challenges presented to us have become a real challenge. Funding is very important, which in the report it addresses that. The retention and recruitment of firefighters and training. So with the reauthorization of these grants is very important, not only to the paid, but the rural departments in Pennsylvania. So we encourage those. The online training to help meet individual needs for not only our areas, but rural areas, makes it very time consuming to go to training centers. So allowing this will increase our members to be able to go online and obtain that training and then test at a practical test site. So with that, I thank each and every one of you for your support in presenting these House bills, and definitely ask for your recommendation in passing these bills to help also rural Pennsylvania. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Next, I'm calling up Tyler Forst. Am I saying that? firefighter, EMT, Fairfield Fire and EMS, Adams County.
One second, folks. All right, so like you said, my name's Tyler Ferace. I'm a 17-year-old firefighter in EMT. I'm from Adams County, Pennsylvania. I'm also a firefighter in Emmitsburg, Maryland. I live right on the Mason-Dixon, so it makes it pretty easy to do both of those. I've been a firefighter for about 2 years now. I certified as an EMT in March at the age of 17, certified as Firefighter 1 in May. Had to go through Maryland for my training because Pennsylvania doesn't allow 16 and 17-year-old junior firefighters to certify as firefighters. So I'm an EMT for Adams Regional EMS, so we cover approximately 240 miles of Adams County, and we respond to over 6,000 calls annually. We work out of 4 different fire stations, and we've helped as fire stations struggle to staff their own ambulances due to issues with budgeting and funding, things like that. We've helped take over and help provide emergency services to the citizens of those communities. I'm also a firefighter, as I said, for Fairfield and Fire and EMS. We cover approximately 50 square miles of Adams County. We run mutual aid into Frederick County and Franklin County as needed. We run about 400 to 500 calls annually. Adams Regional is funded 100% through the money we make from calls and through our ambulance memberships. We sell memberships that way people can have coverage and it's free to them. That's how we get all of our funding in Adams Regional. Fairfield is funded through different methods. We have funding coming through the fire tax. We also have funding coming through grants and through our fundraisers. We do fundraisers like bingo every week, things like that. Fairfield Ambulance Company was recently put out of service due to the fact that we had no funding. So House Bill 1347, which allows the direct payment from insurance companies to ambulance companies, would have helped our department stay alive a lot longer. We struggled to staff an ambulance because we couldn't pay providers full-time to come in and staff. The issue is still found in my current ambulance company, Adams Regional. A lot of our issues stem from the fact that we don't receive funding from every call that we run. We're not guaranteed any funding from any call. And with issues like that, it's hard to pay providers the money they need and the money they deserve, which then creates all sorts of other issues when you have providers struggling to make ends meet, struggling to, that adds mental stress to them, adds all sorts of things that we don't need to be adding to our first responders. So if we can help pass this bill and help allow the direct funding from insurance companies to the ambulance companies, all around it's going to help keep other companies in service so that we aren't losing, the services like Fairfield. We're not losing the services because we can't fund them. The coverage will be there. You can guarantee 24/7 coverage when you can pay providers. And once you can guarantee the coverage, you can protect your citizens a lot better than we are currently. That's all I really have to say. So,
Great.
thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Ed Heltman, Vice President, Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania. Ed? Here he is.
Good morning. My name is Ed Heltman. I'm Vice President of the Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania and also President of Medevac Ambulance in Western Pennsylvania. I'm here today to ask the support for House Bill 1347. Most EMS providers in the state of Pennsylvania operate on a collection rate of less than 60%. So let's apply that to any other business that would operate continuously with under 60% collection rate. Every day, EMS responders respond to calls, and of course we have no idea whether or not we'll be compensated for that call, and they're not asking to be compensated when they respond. We understand that's a duty. However, one of the things that in that response mode, we understand that some people will have the wherewithal to pay for our service, and there will be some people that do not. But the added frustration to that is to understand that there are people who have been paid for our services, but then choose not to forward that payment on to us. So with many of the items identified in SR 6 Commission, the one for EMS was the fact that we are unable to recruit and retain adequate staffing. That ties back to funding. When you are competing now with other health professions that utilize EMTs and paramedics, we're not just competing against other EMS agencies, but we're competing against other healthcare providers. We need an adequate, sustainable funding source, and HB 1347 will certainly assist in that endeavor. I would strongly encourage your support for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, we're almost done here. Let me get to my notes. Hey, I'd like to thank you all for being here. We had a great turnout today from all the representatives. We had probably the most representatives I've seen come out to a press conference in the past couple years, and I thank them. We have with us in the crowd, we have firefighters, we have paid and volunteer firefighters, we have EMTs, we have paramedics. But the point of this, and if you don't believe me, the crisis is real. Just ask these people here, any one of them, they'll tell you it's a real crisis. We've heard fire companies that are shutting down, ambulance companies that are closing for all kinds of different reasons, some financial, some dealing with manpower. Okay, but the one thing I want you to take away from this conference is we all speak with one voice. We are united in this effort, and we need these 23 items to pass the House, go to the Senate, and to be voted on and signed by the governor into law if we're going to save our EMS community. So thank you all for being here today, and we appreciate it.